Into tier 3, because now you get into the conversation, guys. Say you start out your draft and you're like, I have to have Austin Eckler or Christian McCaffrey, and then there's another running back or even a quarterback you like in round 2. How long, Barry, can you realistically wait before you take that first wide receiver for your team? And is that cutoff somewhere in this group of tier 3?
It's not. Like, I would be nervous having one of these guys in tier 3 as my wide receiver 1. I think you want, at least, especially given the depth of running back, which we talked about on yesterday's show, the depth at quarterback that we've talked about, where those guys go. Like, I think it's important that you have at least a tier 1 or tier 2 wide receiver as your wide receiver 1. So, like, and even I'd be a little nervous with, like, T. Higgins or Smith as my wide receiver 1. I think they're great wide receiver 2. So this list here, tier 3, as we look at it, Keenan Allen, DK Metcalf, Deebo Samuel, Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Hopkins, and Amari Cooper. Very solid tier 3, but I don't think I'd feel comfortable with any of these guys as my wide receiver 1. They all have question marks, right? I mean, you know, is this the Keenan Allen, is this the year that Mike Williams overtakes him, right? DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett was better than him last year, right? I mean, like, so, and what does JSN do that offense as well? Deebo, we've talked a lot about Ayuk. You know, Calvin Ridley, we love Calvin Ridley, but he's been out of football for quite some time. And so there's just, as you go down that list, there's just, you know, question marks here. Amari Cooper, tons of questions, obviously, about Deshaun Watson, wide range of outcomes for what he does here. But I'll talk about Ridley here for a second here. He's had 34 career games where he's gotten at least 6 targets. He averages 18.7 fantasy points per game. I think we all agree Trevor Lawrence is going to take a step forward this year after a very good year last year. But, you know, it's going to be a pass-first offense. They went out, they got him. The training camp reports are off the charts. The buzz is palpable. But my question for you guys is like, we haven't seen this guy play, and the last time we saw him play, he was crushing for a very bad Falcons team where he was really the only guy. And now he comes to a team where there's a lot of mouths to feed. How comfortable are you guys with Ridley as your wide receiver 2?
I think wide receiver 2, so long as you've gotten one of the elite guys before him, is fine. But he probably has the widest range of outcomes of any wide receiver, I can imagine. Because, I mean, he could be a top 7 wide receiver this season. And he also might just not be any good anymore because we haven't seen him in so long. So I think Ridley is very high variance. Another guy I think is hugely high variance is Deebo Samuel, who is going a little bit under the radar. In 2021, which is only 2 years ago, Deebo was wide receiver 3, and he missed time and also played hurt towards the end of the season. And I think on talent, he's, to me, clearly a top 10 wide receiver in the sport. And it's just all about, well, how much a Kittle and Ayuk and McCaffrey, to an extent, how much are they going to take away from him? But because he has the upside to be a top 5 wide receiver. Right,
and the other thing, though, and McCaffrey's the biggest key there, because a lot of what fueled that wide receiver 3 season was he was getting rushing attempts.
Yep.
Like they were using him in the goal line. Like they were doing, right, exactly. So that's the fact is so a lot of the versatility that Deebo brought, they now have with McCaffrey. And do they want to just say, okay, you know, we don't want to put that wear and tear on you, and we'll do it maybe once a game, twice a game, something like that. But the usage that we saw 2 years ago, and even someone in the first half of last year, candidly before they got McCaffrey, how much did that continue, Connor?
I think you wonder, there's an element here where the Niners obviously always in contention, a lot of talent. It feels like almost load management with Deebo could be a very real thing. I mean, there's going to be weeks where, hey, we got to have this game. We're going to be force-feeding Deebo. But I feel like there's also weeks where they really will sit back and be like, we don't want to put a lot of snap count on this guy. And in fantasy, that scares you. I mean, it scares you a lot where his ADP is right now.
Yeah, and that team is going to be, I think, extremely matchup dependent, where there are just going to be weeks where Deebo is kind of unsighted because the matchup is just better with Kittle or with Ayuk or with McCaffrey as a pass catcher out of the backfield. And I think it's just going to wax and wane, where Deebo is probably going to have a week where he ends as wide receiver 1 this season. But you just never know which week that's going to be.
Let's jump into tier 4 because his teammate Brandon Ayuk sits in this tier. And Barry, he's a fascinating player to me because he's always had the top-notch talent. Now looks to be really hitting his stride. And obviously the Niners, now that Brock Purdy's healthy, gives you probably a little bit more confidence for Ayuk's season as well.
He's going in the 9th round over on ESPN. And this is a guy who from week 6 on last year was a top 15 wide receiver in fantasy points per game. He tied for the team lead in red zone targets. Seems to be a connection with him and Brock Purdy as well. And so I think you can make an argument, as much as we all like Deebo Samuel, I think you can make a strong argument that Brandon Ayuk at cost is actually a better pick if you want to invest in the 49ers passing attack here. But there's a lot of great names here in this tier 4. Mike Williams, who I'm high on, who made the love-hate list, right? Then Christian Kirk, DJ Moore, Christian Watson, Drake London, Deontay Johnson, who has to be better, who absolutely has to be better than he was last year. I think that offense takes a step forward, as we talked about, and just positive regression. Chris Godwin comes in next. Terry McLaurin, my Commanders, Ayuk, and then Tyler Lockett. And honestly, I think I'm too low on Tyler Lockett, guys. I'm too low on Tyler Lockett. I need to change that.
The forever slept on Tyler Lockett. It's truly amazing.
And I mean, Godwin, I think will be, like Baker Mayfield will be able to get the ball to Chris Godwin. Jarvis Landry had a number of productive fantasy seasons with Baker Mayfield as quarterback.
Yep, I like that. Connor, who do you like more this year, Christian Watson or Drake London?
Honestly, it might be Drake London just because of the fact that he had nothing with Mariota last year, and you see the talent when they finally kind of ripped the cord out of that one. This guy was the 8th overall pick in the draft. I think Christian Watson is an explosive player, but I think he's still a little bit raw in contested catch situations down the field. That's London's calling card, and this isn't about Christian Watson versus Drake London either or, right, as the player. It's about the situation. Drake London has to be the guy getting the targets in the offense, an offense that we're already concerned about Kyle Pitts' involvement. It's about Drake London in that offense.
It's so weird. I agree with you in that it's not about necessarily the talent versus the talent. It's about opportunity. But I actually argue that Watson has the better opportunity.
So you like Jordan Love?
Well, just it's not that I like Jordan Love. I think Jordan Love will be. I think the worst case for Jordan Love is Desmond Ritter. Like I think there's a chance Jordan Love is good.
That's fair.
But so I think at worst it's even. And at best, I think Watson will have the better quarterback. I think it'll be a more aggressive offense in Green Bay. They'll pass it more than Atlanta wants to. And actually, I'd rather, if I'm, when I look around target competition, like I'd rather have a guy that only has Romeo Doubs and Jaden Reed and Luke Musgrave. So you got 2 rookies and a 4th round pick who was inconsistent last year versus Kyle Pitts and Bijan Robinson. Right, I mean that's who Drake London's got to compete with for touches in that offense. So I just actually think Watson's got less. I think he's potentially got a better quarterback situation. I think he's got a more aggressive offense, and I think he's got less target competition.
Yep,
would be my take.
I think Drake London is probably a little bit just better than Christian
Watson
Watson potentially, but
and I'm not debating that piece.
Right.
But the thing with Christian Watson that was really interesting to me last year is that he got targeted a ton in the red zone, which I didn't really expect out of his player profile. But he had 14 targets in the red zone. The only guy in the Packers who had more was Alan Lazard, who's not there anymore. So just Rodgers using him as a red zone weapon was really interesting. And if Jordan Love is going to use him in the same way, then all of a sudden he has a lot more upside.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBC Sports and RotoWorld.com. Just want to thank you so much for watching what you just watched, or at least being too lazy to click out of it after the autoplay just kept it going. So either way, thank you so much for just letting it scroll by your screen. And now I'd like to ask you respectfully, please subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel for the latest NFL news, fantasy headlines from RotoWorld, and betting analysis from NBC Sports Edge.